Last week, former President Barack Obama would sit down with Hamilton College President Stephen Tepper as part of the school's Sacerdote series. Several moments from their conversation has caught the ears of the public, particularly Obama's admission that he could not get away with anything Donald Trump and the current administration are doing. D.L. Hughley would take that portion of the interview to post on his own social media.
Imagine if I had done any of this. I just want to be clear about this. Imagine if I had pulled Fox News' credentials from the White House press corps. You're laughing, but no, this is what's happening. Imagine if I had said to law firms that were representing parties that were upset with policies my administration had initiated, that you will not be allowed into government buildings. We will punish you economically for dissenting from the Affordable Care Act or the Iran deal. We will ferret out students who protest against my policies. It's unimaginable that the same parties that are silent now would have tolerated behavior like that from me or a whole bunch of my predecessors. So, and I say this not on a partisan basis. This has to do with something more precious, which is, who are we as a country and what values do we stand for?
Throughout the clip, Obama would run down several of Trump's offenses that have had the American people upset. Obama would simply state that those in Congress would not have done the same for him 15 years ago when he was in office or any other president. Now, Hughley couldn't have agreed more with what former President Obama had to say, as his caption would read, "They lost their stuff over a tan suit." This, of course, was in reference to Obama's biggest controversy while in office, wearing a tan suit, as it was heavily criticized by political media personalities, with a few even calling it unpresidential and impeach-worthy. Soften it with, "in some of my other predecessors." DJ D-Rec from Wildin' Out would chime in, "Imagine if Obama acted like the Trump is acting like." Roxy Diaz would also agree and write, "Imagine, but also, dang, he knows how to control the room when he got quiet. I got quiet too." Air is another comedian who jumped into the conversation by posting the same clip to his own social media. Regarding Obama's comments, Spears would say, "This is why it makes me sick to my stomach when I hear black people say, 'What did Obama do for us? He wasn't Trump. That's what he did for us.' Because if he was, some of white America would have never let us live it down. Obama was eloquent, intelligent, classy, efficient, and was black excellence. Some of white America got upset over a tan suit. Imagine if Obama behaved like Trump. Imagine if Obama incited January the 6th. Spears isn't known for his political commentary like D.L. Hughley. The comments under Spears' social media account were more mixed, possibly reflecting the more conservative audience.
Today, we finally have confirmation the United States government has in fact killed 4 U.S. citizens with drone attacks. Now, they acknowledged in a letter that they sent to Congress, quote, according to the New York Times, formally acknowledged that the United States had killed 4 American citizens in drone strikes in Yemen and Pakistan. Now, this is, of course, a day before President Obama is set to give a speech on national security. So they kind of want to get this out of the way. Oh, by the way, not a big deal, but we happen to kill 4 U.S. citizens. Let's move on. Now, one of them, they say they deliberately killed. In fact, they say, quote, deliberately killed Anwar al-Awlaki. Now, he was the propagandist for al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, we believe, but they say that he was actually directly involved with some of the attacks, including the attempted Christmas Day bomber, who, of course, had the bomb in his underwear and luckily did not go off. And they say that he was also involved in planning and execution of a 2010 attack. Obviously, he'll never be brought to justice or to a court to adjudicate that because he's already dead. But the government assures us, quote, the decision to target Anwar al-Awlaki was lawful, it was considered, and it was just. Now, that's, of course, what they always say. Now, again, whether it was lawful is not determined by any court of law. It's just Attorney General Eric Holder and the people in the White House who decided that it was lawful. And normally U.S. citizens get trials. Now, understandably, he was in a foreign country and it was a little hard to apprehend him. We understand that. So whether you agree with the Anwar al-Awlaki killing is an open question, and some do and some don't. But remember, there are 3 others who were killed. Let's show you who they are. Samir Khan was killed in the same attack that killed al-Awlaki. And then in a different attack, Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki, who was a 16-year-old son of Anwar al-Awlaki, was also killed. And so was a 4th U.S. citizen that had really not widely been acknowledged by the U.S. government previously. Now, they had not acknowledged any of these, but it was pretty clear that they had done the first 3. Now we find out Jude Mohammed, also a U.S. citizen from North Carolina, also killed. The other 3 were in Yemen. Jude Mohammed was in Pakistan. Now, how about the other 3 that were not Anwar al-Awlaki? Well, the government says, quote, these individuals were not specifically targeted by the United States. I find that to be the most interesting part of this story. So whether you think we should go after certain targets and violate the sovereignty of other countries is an interesting question. Whether you trust the government that they've got a citizen that they're killing, like Anwar al-Awlaki, that you trust that he was a terrorist who was in the middle of executing plots against the United States, that's a second question. But to me, the most important question is, do we know who we're killing? And here's
was that U.S. officials leaked stories to the press saying that he was 21 years old. He wasn't. He had just turned 16, and we have the birth certificate to prove that. He was born in Colorado in 1995. Then they said that he had been with Ibrahim al-Bana, who was an Egyptian member of al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. And the dominant story that's been floated is that the U.S. was trying to kill al-Bana and that Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki just happened to be next to him, which is an incredible coincidence that this 16-year-old kid whose father was killed 2 weeks earlier in a targeted assassination by the U.S. government is then killed himself while in the company of another member of AQAP. The CIA said that al-Bana wasn't even on their target list, so opening up the speculation that it was a unilateral JSOC operation, Joint Special Operations Command operation. When I spoke to a JSOC guy who was in Yemen at the time working on that strike, and he wouldn't tell me any of the details, but he said, the guy we were trying to get, we didn't get. And I said, well, how did you feel when you saw that this teenage American citizen had been killed? And he goes, well, there's a reason I'm not doing this anymore. And so we don't know who it was. Was Ibrahim al-Bana there? If he was, AQAP says he's very much alive and that it was lies that he was killed, if that's the claim. Then the U.S. said, well, it was an outrageous mistake. This is all anonymous, though. They'll never talk about it. President Obama's never been asked about the killing of this teenager. My new reporting, though, that I did very recently suggests that this was a great controversy within the White House. I understand from a former senior official of the administration who worked on this program at the time that when it became clear that Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki had been killed, that President Obama was furious, and that John Brennan, who at the time was the president's Homeland Security and Counterterrorism advisor, the guy running all of these operations, that Brennan believed or suspected that it was an intentional hit against Anwar al-Awlaki's son, this 16-year-old kid, and ordered a review. And I asked this former senior official what happened with the review, and he said, I don't know. And then when I got in touch with the White House recently and I exchanged a series of emails with the National Security Council spokesperson, she told me that she wouldn't discuss any of the specifics about this and said that they're not going to talk about operational details or any of their reviews, and then pasted a boilerplate response about drone strikes into the email. But then when I asked this former senior official, so if the narrative on this is that it was a mistake, then why didn't you